This is a 2006 Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor. Now lately I have been obsessed with these cars. I've been reading Wikipedia. I've been watching YouTube videos. I've been looking at auction websites. So I decided to rent one of these cars from Turo. And in the tradition of the great Doug DeMuro, I'm going to show you all the quirks and features, I'm going to get it out on the road and drive it, and I'm going to give it a DougScore. Now Doug, if you ever end up watching this video, I want you to know that I tried to use your code when I signed up from Turo, but they said that their partner program has been suspended. So, sorry man, but I tried to get you some sugar out of the bowl. We'll start under the hood with the quirks and features of the Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, and being that this was a former cop car, you might expect it to have some big, bad motor. And it just sort of doesn't. This is the same 4.6-liter modular V8 with single overhead cams and 2 valves per cylinder that Ford used in millions and millions of cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Now on the civilian Crown Victorias of this generation, you had 2 optional engines. They were both the 4.6-liter, but you could either have the base single exhaust unit with 224 horsepower or the dual exhaust unit with 239 horsepower. All Crown Victoria Police Interceptors from 1998 to 2011 got the dual exhaust system with the resonators deleted out of the exhaust. Starting in 2004, Ford added an airbox and a mass airflow sensor in the same style of the Mercury Marauder, which upped engine horsepower to 250. This being a 2006 model, it has the 250 horsepower engine. The only other differences, there's an external oil cooler on the Crown Victoria Police Interceptor models for better cooling in long idle situations or highway pursuit situations. You have an upgraded higher output alternator. The battery that came standard was also upgraded, and the idle RPM was 40 RPM higher to power all of the electrical units that would be affixed to the vehicle. As you can see, the trunk on the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor is massive. In fact, it has over 20 cubic feet of cargo space. But there are some weird things about it. First of all, the back seats do not fold down as they do in most modern sedans. The spare tire is up on this shelf right here, and in fact some police departments would install safes onto those shelves to keep weapons or other things that they want to keep safe. And the shape of the trunk itself is strange. As you see, the floor of the trunk, you have a very deep well for cargo, but you have these strange humps on either side of the trunk that interrupt the cargo floor. And why is that? If I get under the car, you can see the reason why the trunk is shaped so strangely. These right here are frame rails. Famously, one of the biggest quirks and features of the Ford Crown Victoria is that it was the last passenger car produced with traditional body-on-frame design. This design has now been relegated to pickup trucks and large SUVs, as a unibody has supplanted it for passenger vehicles. However, the heavy-duty construction was one thing that made the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor so loved by police departments. As long as I'm under the car, we might as well talk about the rear differential, which is that sort of pumpkin-looking thing in the middle of your screen. Now, civilian Crown Victorias of this generation had a standard rear differential gearing of 2.73 to 1, whereas the Police Interceptor units were standard with a 327 to 1 or an optional 355 to 1 rear differential. When it comes to rear differentials, the higher the number, generally the better your acceleration, but the lower your fuel economy and potentially the lower your top speed. So the Crown Victoria Police Interceptor traded some fuel economy for some acceleration. Another difference on the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor was Ford's severe duty shock absorbers. The ride height was also approximately 1 inch higher on this car so that you could clear curbs in the event of a police chase. I'm going to do a walk around on this car now just to show you the look and the styling of it. And what you should know is that this car is absolutely massive. The Ford Crown Victoria of this generation was 212 inches long, 77 inches wide, and 57 inches high. Now, to put that into perspective, this car is 8 inches longer than a 2020 Chevy Tahoe, and it's only 4 inches narrower than a 2020 Chevy Tahoe. Of course, it's shorter because it's not an SUV, but the Crown Victoria came from a time when big cars didn't have to be SUVs. Another potential quirk and/or feature of a P71 Ford Crown Victoria is evidence of its former life once it's been sold to the public. Now you can see this one here has these notches cut into the front bumper. That would have been where the push bar was when this was a police car. Also, if you buy one of these, you're almost guaranteed to get a random assortment of holes in the roof where light bars, antennas, and who knows what else was installed during its service. You may also have holes in the trunk, although this particular vehicle doesn't appear to have any. Also, the paint on these cars wasn't very good. It's known to peel off in large chunks. I don't know if that's a quirk or a feature, but it's a thing. Moving on to the back seats of the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, and in the words of your local constabulary, move along, nothing to see here. There's nothing fancy, there's no rear air vents, there's no center armrest, there's nothing. This was not meant to be a comfortable place in this car. It was meant to be a place for perps. However, I am going to use it to start talking about the specific differences between a Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor and a standard civilian model Crown Victoria. Now, on all Crown Victoria Police Interceptors, the standard seat in the rear was vinyl. Now, there were tons and tons of options on these cars, so you may find one that doesn't have vinyl seats or the little tiny plastic back seat, but for the most part, they're all going to have vinyl rear seats and cloth bucket front seats. Another difference with the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor is that supposedly there's a type of stab-proof material in the back of the front seats so that the person you just arrested can't stab you. However, I'm not going to get a knife and try it out. Another difference between the Police Interceptors and the standard Crown Victorias is on this body style of Crown Vic, all of the civilian cars had something called Ford's Securicode keypad right here above the door. That allowed you to type in a key code and unlock the door without the key. No Police Interceptor had that feature. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is apparently people try to fake Police Interceptors. But by the end of this video, you're going to be able to tell a fake from the real McCoy. Moving along to the front seats of the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, and you can see this car is equipped with the cloth bucket front seats. Now, one thing I've noticed with these is they get wear in strange places. I'm pretty sure because cops were getting in and out of the cars with their magic tool belts and guns and mace and billy clubs and whatever else they got. So if you buy one of these surplus, it's very likely that your front seats will not be in mint condition. Something else you'll notice in the interior of this Police Interceptor, there's no center console. Now, when this car was actually in service, it almost certainly had one, but these are typically removed when these cars are sold through government auctions to the public. Something else you'll notice is the floor. It's this really kind of durable but definitely not fancy rubber material, which is easy to clean if your perp makes a mess in your P71. Another thing unique about the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor is that the trunk release button is moved to the center of the dashboard. The theory behind this is that in an emergency, either partner would be able to hit the button quickly and get the serious hardware out of the trunk. One thing that really shows the age of the Panther platform that the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor was built on is the air conditioning controls. Now, they're not that difficult. Cold, hot, medium, fan speed, whatever. But look at this adjustment for where the air is blowing. Max AC, norm AC, vent, off, floor, mix, defrost. What are we mixing? Max AC. Are these the only two with the AC on? It doesn't have the separate AC button to turn the air conditioner actually on and off. Now, this is a 2006 model car. I was in a 2004 Subaru that we took in on trade the other day, and I would say that even its climate controls made a lot more sense than these do. But at least you get a nice dedicated button for the rear defroster. You also get cup holders. Oh, jeez. Another thing unique to the P71 Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor is going to be the gauge cluster. All police interceptors had the 140 mile an hour speedometer, and they all say certified calibration. Now, what does this mean? Well, there's more than one way to get a speeding ticket. Of course, the cops can use their radar gun and track you that way, but they can also pace you. If you're doing 80 miles an hour in a 65, and someone in a Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor gets behind you and paces you at that 80 miles an hour, that's admissible in court because this speedometer has certified calibration. Something else that's unique to the police interceptors is the trip computer situation. Of course, we have our odometer. This car currently has 145,796 miles on it. We have our trip computer, current trip 781.2 miles, but then we have an engine hour meter. This is not something that was on the civilian Crown Victorias, but because police cars spend lots of time idling in parking lots and this and that, they added an engine hour meter so that you know how long your engine's been idling. This is something to check if you're considering buying one of these from a police auction. One thing that I absolutely love about the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor is the column shifter. Now, it's hooked up to a 4-speed automatic transmission, and in the Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, the shift points are tuned to be a little bit higher in the RPM range to give you better acceleration, and it's actually tuned to not shift as smoothly as the civilian versions. The reason for this is durability. You feel the shifts more in this car, but apparently that helps the transmission last longer. Now, of course, you don't have Tiptronic or paddle shifters or anything like that in this car, but you do get this handy button right here to turn overdrive off. And you also can kind of control what gear you're in with the column shifter. You can bump it down to first and you'll be in first gear. Click it up into second and you'll be in second gear. And then if you click it into drive but hit that overdrive off button, you will have locked it into third gear and you'll be manually changing gears in your Ford Crown Victoria. There's one more surefire way to know if you're looking at a genuine police interceptor. Right here in the VIN on this 2006 model, it says P71. If it's a 2010 or a 2011, it'll say P7B. You can't fake that. And now, let's get this beauty out on the road and drive it. Alright, so driving the Crown Vic. Man, I love that column shifter. So I have driven a lot of cars in my day. Almost anything you could name. And nothing feels quite like a Crown Victoria Police Interceptor. Even a regular Crown Victoria doesn't feel like this car. I rented one and drove it to Vegas once, and it felt slow on the highway because the rear gearing was so tall that the engine just didn't have enough power to push the car along the way that I wanted it to. Because of the shorter gearing and the additional horsepower in the Police Interceptor, you don't have that problem. The handling, despite the fact that this is a huge, heavy body-on-frame car, I don't know if it's the shocks that are on this thing or what, but the car handles better than it should. It's no sports car. I've watched videos online where people say, oh, the Police Interceptor handles like a sports car. It does not handle like a sports car, but it does handle much, much better than it should. The other thing it does better than it should is maneuverability around town. I can really see why a taxi driver or a police officer would want to drive one of these things, because around town, you can get in the lane, you can get in the parking place, you can put this car exactly where you want it to go, which is weird because it's huge. I mean, this is a huge car, but it's very maneuverable. The handling is good, and it's that dichotomy that really defines everything about driving one of these cars. You know, the interior materials are just trash. They're cheap. The way the interior is laid out is old. It's utilitarian at best and crap at worst. But the car feels indestructible. You know, it's this weird thing where, okay, the interior's super cheap, but the car feels like it's a tank. You know, the transmission's the perfect example. The transmission is clunky when it shifts. It doesn't shift smooth a lot of the time, but that's meant to make it more durable. That's meant to make it hold up over the long term and over a lifetime of abuse. I mean, cops drive cars hard. That's a known fact. They drive aggressively. They get into police chases. They sit in a parking lot and idle for hours. You know, everything that a cop does with a car is pushing it to its limit, or towards its limit anyway. And the Crown Vic was built to hold up to it, and it did. I mean, police officers, if I was a cop, this is the only car I'd want to drive. And I've heard stories that, you know, police officers and police departments were very sad when this car was discontinued. And I could totally understand that. I'd rather have this than a Ford Explorer. You know, most of the police in my area, they're either in Explorers or they're in Chargers. Dodge Charger's a fantastic car, but it doesn't feel solid the way that this one does. If I was a cop, I'd much rather have this than a Charger. And with that being said, overall, the Charger's a better car, but this is a better cop car. All right, getting onto the freeway here. Oh, feel the power from the modular 4.6 liter V8. Hustling it through the curves, no problem. So you get onto the highway, and you know, it's not just surface streets where this car shines. It's a great highway car too. It tracks straight. The steering is good. I mean, it's not quite there, but it almost has the feeling of a nice German car on the highway. You know, you go to change lanes, you put it exactly where you want it. And this may sound stupid, but again, this is a huge body-on-frame car. It handles better than it should. It handles way better than a Cadillac DTS, which was produced at the same time as this. Of course, the Cadillac was unibody, front-wheel drive, and meant more for luxury, but handling-wise, it felt more like a body-on-frame car than a Crown Victoria Police Interceptor does. It's crazy to me how well this car drives for what it is. You have to kind of temper your expectations when it comes to certain cars. It's not going to out-handle a Ferrari. It's not going to outclass or out-track an S-Class Mercedes-Benz. But it's not as far off from the Benz as you might think. The steering's a little vague, but not much. I mean, it's pretty responsive. I love this car. I really do. I may have to end up buying one of these. Part of the reason why I rented this vehicle from Turo was, you know, like I said at the beginning of the video, I've had an obsession with it lately, and my obsession with it is the heavy-duty manner in which it's built. You know, it's built to take abuse over the long term. The fuel tank in one of these things is made so that if this car is rear-ended at up to 70 miles an hour, the fuel tank will not leak. That's if you're a highway patrolman and you have somebody pulled over on the side of the road and another motorist on the highway crashes into the back of your cop car. You don't want that fuel tank blowing up, and it won't. Steel braided brake lines were standard on these things. I mean, just all these little things make it so heavy duty and so impressive that I just love it. I really do. And hearing that, you may think that it'll be difficult for me to be objective when DougScoring this car, but I promise I will be, and I will go by the strict standards laid out by Doug DeMuro and give this car a fair and just DougScore. Because if there's anything that a P71 Police Interceptor wants deep in its 4.6 liter heart, it's justice. Starting with the weekend categories and styling, the P71 Police Interceptor is a strange mix of bold and bland, boring and badass. I like how it looks, but of all the B words I would use to describe it, beautiful isn't one of them, and it gets a 4 out of 10. Acceleration, it does 0 to 60 in more than 7.1 seconds, and it gets a 1 out of 10. Handling is much better than you would expect from this body-on-frame behemoth, and it gets a 5 out of 10. Fun factor sort of depends on who you are. If you're the type of guy to open carry to the grocery store, this may be the ultimate car for you, but regular people won't get too much out of it. I will say when I rolled into the parking lot at work with this, blasting that Bad Boys song from the TV show Cops, everyone went nuts and came out with their smartphones in hand to take the P71's picture. Still, this isn't the best weekend thrill machine, and it gets a 4 out of 10. Cool factor's hard to pin down. This car has been a permanent fixture in American culture for 20 plus years, and everyone has seen them on the streets of their hometowns, as well as blockbuster movies and TV shows. I'm going to have to split the difference and give it a 5 out of 10, giving the Police Interceptor a weekend score of 19 out of 50. On to the daily categories and features. The Crown Vic ain't got many, and it gets a 3 out of 10. Comfort is fine, the ride is decent, but backseat room is limited due to the old body-on-frame design, and it gets a 5 out of 10. Quality is this car's true dichotomy. The interior materials are garbage, but the mechanical reliability and heavy-duty construction give it a 6 out of 10. With practicality, Doug seems to just give every decent-sized four-door sedan a 5 these days, so it gets a 5 out of 10. Value is tough for me to pin down. My local Auto Trader results are dominated by a dealer down here who specializes in these and seems to want all the money and then some. And then you can look at auction websites where you can buy clapped out P71s from random municipalities around the country for less than $1,000. Still, whichever route you go, you'll be getting a unique car that is built like a tank, and I'm giving it a 7 out of 10, making the total daily score 26 out of 50. Add it all up and the DougScore is 45 out of 100. The Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor is an icon and a legend, and you can have one now and drive a car that is unlike anything else on sale today. Just make sure you don't buy one with too many holes in the roof. We try to keep these streets safe, you know, but it's hard. Had a guy the other night all hopped up on crack. Not crack cocaine, butt crack. He's just going around sniffing people's butt cracks. Made him crazy. We had to tase him 6 times to bring him down. I hit my 20 years. I'm retired. Bad boys, what you gonna do when YouTube copyright strikes you? DougScore, quirks and features, trying to live up to Doug DeMuro's. Nobody gonna give you no break. Police not giving no break. Hey, DougScore don't give you no break. 1 on acceleration. Bad boys, what you gonna do